You know what's there? Waiting. Beyond that beach. Immortality! Take it! It's yours!
Welcome to the motherfucking Immortality Lab. Okay. I'm fucking Christian Martirana. I'm here with Brian Devonshire. We're gonna fucking teach you how to become healthier people. I'm fucking sick. I'm sick of seeing people complain when they're older about being in pain and not being able to do the things that they want to do. And, you know, we're young, and a lot of old people will look at us and be like, oh, you don't know what it's like to be old. Well, you know, I don't, but I do have parents and grandparents who are old, and they bitch to me about being old.
Yes.
So I want to deal with those pains and aches. You know, I'm a personal trainer. I take a lot of pride in functional movement and fitness and how we truly should move as human beings. I know you're a nutritionist, so you obviously take a lot of pride and passion into what we put into our body. And so combining those two things, it's very wholesome. It's a huge part of our longevity of life. So fuck yeah. What we do is impart our knowledge onto you guys and show you how to live as healthy of a life as you possibly can to become the best version of yourself. And that's the fucking Immortality Lab in a nutshell. Today we're going to be talking about diabetes, because it's one of the most prevalent killers today.
That's it. And so I'll be taking over this episode. Like you said, I'm Brian. I'm a dietitian. I work in healthcare, and I believe in the same values because, you know, old people complain about wasting your youth, and I've seen it firsthand, people just wasting away in a long-term care facility, and that's what flipped the switch for me. I just don't want to do that. And most of the solutions I have to give to people is, well, you really just needed to go back in time and do this. There's like no fix anymore. So you need to start early to prevent, wasting away your life. So what do you know about it, Christian? Let's just get a broad overview.
I mean, wow, that's how much detail do you want me to go into there?
Just 30,000 foot.
Yeah. In a nutshell, there's two different types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, you're basically out of your control. You know, type 2, it's basically you did it to yourself. It's controllable. Yeah. And that's what, from my understanding, we're going to be mostly talking about today.
Yeah, type 2.
Okay, cool.
Type 1 is you can't make insulin because of something happened to your pancreas, or, you know, something's wrong with you, like genetically. And type 2 is you're just resistant to insulin. Like it doesn't work anymore. Your body still makes it. So usually when you think of type 2 diabetics, you got to get the insulin and you inject it into yourself, or they have an insulin pump. So they're just essentially getting more insulin than their body can make so that it can do the job that it was supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the one we're talking about today. And I wanted to get into the history because it's pretty interesting. So the Greek diabetes comes from siphoning. So they observed people passing water like a siphon, and that's one of the symptoms of diabetes. You just pee all the time. And so here's a very scary quote. No essential part of the drink is absorbed by the body, while great masses of flesh are liquefied into urine.
It's horrible.
That's what they observed back then.
Liquefied flesh, dude. Oh.
Great masses were liquefied. It's terrible.
Man.
So, and it's not to be confused with a different type of diabetes, which is diabetes insipidus. And that just means you pee all the time. And that has nothing to do with insulin. That's just something else, like with your brain is all messed up, makes you pee a lot. So the Indians back in the day, they called it honey urine because it would it attract ants. So you pee out extra sugar in your blood. That's one way to get rid of all that. They observed abnormal appetite, thirst, and gangrene. So, you know, they've been observing all of this stuff for like thousands of years. They've categorized it pretty well. And even in 600 BC, this Indian physician, they were actually able to identify two separate types of diabetes.
Wow.
Yeah, so they got it pretty much figured out. And Hippocrates also around that same time, they're like, yeah, there's two of them. And their solution was exercise and a low starch diet, which seems pretty obvious, right, to most people.
Right. But at the same time, a lot of people are very uneducated in those things, so it should be obvious, but
right. To us, it's obvious. And to a diabetic, I'm sure they've heard it millions of times. But
absolutely.
One of the things I thought was interesting was the other treatments that they were doing. And we still kind of do this today. We just kind of shoot in the dark. We throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So they were doing,
shoot first, aim later.
That's it. Like, no, they were just trying anything.
Yeah.
So here's a list, and it's they were doing jelly of viper's flesh as a cure for diabetes.
What now? Jelly what?
I don't know. Like the fat underneath the viper flesh, maybe.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean,
like viper, like a snake.
A snake.
Wow.
Snake.
Okay. Interesting.
And then water from a bird pond. Yeah, and they had a specific measurement for it too. So you had to drink a certain amount of it.
It's like a bubonic plague time when people would have all these weird things and
yeah, they had the mask and they were just like,
yeah, with the nose and everything.
It seems to be working, so we'll
ward off evil and shit, dude.
Yeah, and then they did any kind of oil, dates, like the sugary fruit.
Yeah.
Sweet almonds, coral. Opium, of course.
Like in the sea? Like
yes.
You just like
that's what they did. They took off like red coral or something. They just took off a piece of it and they're like, here. Dude, and another thing is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, use it as a sponge, dude.
I don't know what they did with it, but opium's great, of course, and horseback riding was a solution. I guess you can't pee anymore because you're on a horse.
That's very strange.
And this one was kind of perplexing. This was only like 200 years ago, and some doctor was like, yeah, they're peeing out a lot of sugar, so we need to replace it with more sugar. And you can guess how that went. Giving sugar to a diabetic is so great.
Jesus, dude. Wow.
I know.
And that's funny. The doctor's just like, let's try it.
Yeah,
like,
dude, they were trying
experiments.
They were trying anything. But even
Dr. Montes Toboggan.
Even way back then, though, they still generally saw an improvement with calorie restriction. And they've also figured this out in the 1700s during a war, like the French War or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The soldiers had to ration, so they didn't get as many calories. And guess what? The diabetes rate went down. They saw fewer symptoms. So they were kind of figuring this out, calorie restriction. And also I heard a story that they would just lock someone in a room with no food because of demons, of course, way back then. They would have seizures and whatnot. So, get them out of here. They're what's the word? Taken over by the devil.
Yeah, they need an exorcist.
Yes, that's what they did.
Possessed. Yeah, why couldn't we think of that?
I don't know, man. And so another thing I wanted to point out is they also described the gruesome death of diabetic ketoacidosis. Have you heard about that?
I know what ketoacidosis is, yeah.
Yeah, so it's keto. So there's ketones and there's acidosis. So it's in your blood. There's a lot of ketones in your blood. They're acidic, and it's caused by diabetes, so DKA. So it's like this horrible positive feedback cycle. You typically only see it in type 1 diabetics, but I saw it happen to someone who was type 2 when I was working at a care facility. And they just fixed him with some insulin and IVs. It was, nowadays it's really easy to fix. But
so Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
So going back to the ketones thing, right? So you know how a lot of people are all into the keto diet and everything, and when
Yeah.
you're in the keto diet, you are basically saturating your body with ketones. So
Yes.
so is that kind of proof in a sense that it's unhealthy to do that, or
No, not
like it's
entirely.
correlated to diabetes, or how?
Yeah, it's different when you have really bad insulin resistance. Their body doesn't work right. So in DKA, the ketones get up to levels like 12. I forget the units, but the unit is 12. And for keto diets, you're down to like 2 or 5. So it's
Okay,
much,
okay.
much lower. It doesn't,
Way more. Yeah, yeah.
yes. So it doesn't, it's not an issue really. Um, and it only gets that high because of the insulin resistance. And it's just like a horrible feedback cycle.
Yeah. Snowball. Just
Yeah. So that my patient's situation was like he's a native, so he's really at risk of getting diabetes. So he's like, really overweight. He's insulin resistant because of that. And so in his situation, I imagine he was, drinking, which makes him more insulin resistant. And then he had like a high carb meal. So his blood sugars shot up through the roof, and he couldn't get, his cells in his body couldn't get any nutrients. So his body's like, okay, we gotta ramp up the ketones. And like the insulin is not going to work suddenly. At some point you're going to run out. Your body can only produce so much. So this is where the problem is. That's why you can fix it with a shot of insulin. So his body can only make so much insulin, and he's being bombarded with alcohol and sugar, most likely is how he got into this. And so his body just keeps pumping out ketones, and the insulin isn't working. So neither the ketones nor the sugar or anything can get into the cells. So it just keeps going, And then your body also starts to break down your glycogen in your liver and your muscles to get more sugar out there, because it's like, we're starving. So it's a double whammy. You get the ketoacidosis, just destroying your cells. You get the high blood sugar destroying your cells.
it's a brutal game.
Dude, it's horrible. And yeah, way back in the day, 600 BC, they were seeing these people get to this state, and they're like, what do we do?
And you know what's crazy too? What's crazy about that, honestly, is in 600 BC, pretty much, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the foods that they were eating were whole foods. There's no processed shit like there is now. And processed shit is so much higher in sugar content.
Yeah.
And, like, that's why cancer and diabetes and all these diseases are so prevalent, is all the fast food and this shitty, not whole foods. So it's surprising to me how prevalent it was, even when everyone was healthier in a sense.
I don't think it was very prevalent, but they still recognized it, and they documented it.
Sure.
So it was prevalent enough to be noticed.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. So now it's just worse because we have all the refined sugar and whatnot.
Right.
So the symptoms during this ketoacidosis thing is, you lose your weight. So your body's breaking down your fat and your glycogen to get energy into your body, but it's just not working. So that's where the melting your skin away comes from. Like, they were observing people like lose weight at a rapid pace. They were melting away through their urine,
Right.
And then another response is the acid in your blood from the ketones. You naturally start hyperventilating. So you're just pissing out everything. You're losing weight. You're hyperventilating, and it's just terrible. So you have the increased thirst, and you have the increased appetite. So you're eating food on top of that to try to get energy in, and it's just making it worse.
Right. And then, if you're ignorant to it, then you're like, what the hell's going on
You're
right
gonna
now,
listen.
dude?
You're gonna listen to your
Like,
body.
I'm supposed to eat fruit. It's healthy.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's
you're
making
craving
it
it.
worse.
You're craving it.
Yeah, exactly.
So then,
Ay.
I know. Yeah. And then out of all of this, your brain starts to swell. So you lose mental function, you're hyperventilating, and you could possibly get seizures. So you're like half awake, hyperventilating, you know, to someone who's watching this happen, it's definitely witchcraft, right?
And I could imagine going back to like the 600 BC, that would happen so much more often than it does now. Now that stuff doesn't happen that often because people do have the knowledge and they do have their insulin ready and they know what to do right away.
That's it.
Imagine, dude, like imagine back then, like having a common cold, you're fucking dead. You know, like
yeah, that's what everyone died from.
Like imagine having diabetes, bro, and like not knowing what the hell you should be doing. That's crazy, man. Poor people.
And it makes it worse too, because that's what killed everybody back then was like bacterial infections. And if you have a high blood sugar all the time because you're insulin resistant, it screws with your immune system, and you can't fight off like the simplest bug, and you just die. You know?
I'm surprised they're still alive, man. I'm surprised that it still exists, that they were able to overcome that and carry their genes forward.
Yeah, well,
that's crazy. That's some strong will. That's
maybe the people who got locked in a room because they were, you know,
right. That's what I'm saying.
They went on to have a bunch of kids.
Ooh, fuck this. We gotta live, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So a perfect summary is your blood turns to poison and you die.
Right. Exactly.
So you don't want that, right?
Well said.
You don't want that.
Well said.
Okay. So we went through the history. It's the 1950s. We have drugs now. We've got a pretty good handle on diabetes. And I just wanted to talk about the risk factors because you put this in here, and it's a good idea to go over it. So the risk factors, being overweight, genetics. So if your family members are obese, you'll most likely be susceptible, or if they have, diabetes, you'll most likely be susceptible to getting it. So this is also true with gestational diabetes. So if you're in the womb and the mother gets diabetic, it's changing your genes around to make you more likely to be a diabetic later.
Even type 2 diabetes.
Oh, yeah, this is all just type 2. Type 1.
Okay. First, and that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
So I mean, but type 2 diabetes is mostly habitual stuff. It's mostly things that are your practices. So are you more susceptible to it because you are a kid that is now being put through the same habits that this parent who has gotten type 2 diabetes, obviously from poor habit choices, that they're forcing onto you? Or is it genetically, are you more apt to get it?
It's both.
It is both. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your family has a history of it, and you're in the womb of someone who suddenly gets diabetes, it's changing your genes around a little bit.
And you're genetically more susceptible to it. That's crazy, man. That's
also,
crazy. Take care of yourself, guys.
Yes.
So that you don't give your fucking kids diabetes. Like, come on, guys.
Think about the future.
Yes, seriously.
So that's something that people don't usually think about, and then the obvious ones are the physical inactivity, and you have higher risk as you get older, having high blood pressure. We'll get into that later, and cholesterol levels. So these are all things that are associated with higher risk of getting diabetes.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about all these risk factors as well, I mean, is minus like your age, but all of them kind of have to do with each other. Like if you're practicing some basic healthy practices, like you'll knock out like 4 of those things. You don't have to be like, I got to take care of this one and this one and this one. It's like, take care of this one and all of them kind of follow, it's great. Like it goes back to just like, go back to the basics, man, which will definitely
like the root causes. It's the easiest, simplest solution. It's just rather than the Band-Aids.
Correct. And everyone loves the Band-Aids. Everyone loves cortisone shots. You know? Like I was even talking about, I know I'm kind of getting on a tangent here, but like I was talking with someone the other day and they're like, oh yeah, my shoulder used to hurt. And then I got a cortisone shot and now it doesn't hurt. So now I can do push-ups. I'm like, that's
Nice.
great that it doesn't hurt, but your shoulder is still injured. Like it's
Yes.
still physically doing the same thing that caused the pain.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even want to get into it, honestly. I was just like, oh, cool, man. Like I'm glad you can do push-ups now. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like getting into the whole spiel and
Like,
everything.
be careful or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. And so many people think it's okay. They're like, oh, I'll just get a cortisone shot. The doctor told me to.
Yep.
And like, then they're like, all right, dude, I'm good. Go back to
Dude.
work. And like, man,
I have the same mentality working in healthcare because the doctors, they have to follow their rules, and the patients, I come up to a patient and I talk to them. They're like, who are you? Some dietary guy? The doctor told me to do this.
right.
I'm not going to change my ways. I've been doing
I
this
know.
for 50 years.
Dude, and that's why I want to get a doctorative degree, a PhD, just so like I can be like, I'm fucking Dr.
Yeah.
Martrana.
Do
So
you see
even if I'm,
this?
yeah, exactly. Even if I'm telling you about how cool ants are when they lift their little caterpillar food over to their anthill, you'll still have faith in what I'm saying because I'm a freaking doctor.
Uh-huh.
It's sad that the world is that way, but it's like, it is.
That's the way it is.
All right, back to
Okay.
diabetes.
So we went over the risk factors. But I pulled this out of the CDC website, and it's just the national causes of what's leading deaths in the United States.
Go ahead and share the screen whenever you're ready.
Okay, so heart disease, 647,000. Cancer, number 2. So just leading behind heart disease just by a little bit. And then by a huge margin, accidents. So we went from like 600,000 to 169,000 deaths. So heart disease and cancer, those are the leading by far. And then you go down the list: chronic respiratory disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, and then you got diabetes at 83,000.
Okay, so 83,000 per year.
Death directly because of diabetes.
Heart disease, huh? That damn heart disease, 650,000.
Uh-huh. And then so we got this puny little diabetes only killing 83,000 only, right? But
right.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, so this other diagram we got, it goes back to 1950s. It's a little funky, but this dotted line, number 7, is diabetes. So you can see it's actually going down as a percentage of deaths in the United States, like very slowly. Like it maybe went from 30 to 20% in this graph.
Man, I can't wait for other people to look at this graph. It looks like a damn treasure map of
Mountains
and hills. Like this is the weirdest graph I've ever looked at in my life.
Yeah, so look at this one right here, Alzheimer's. It suddenly came out of nowhere in 1980, and it's climbing that list. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I'm seeing how to read this. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my point is diabetes death directly related to diabetes is pretty stable. That's why I'm showing this. But
dude, you know why Alzheimer's is climbing, right? Like look at the year it's climbing in 1980, right?
Uh-huh.
So all those old people that were born in like the early 1900s,
yep.
That started in like when the industry really started booming, right? So there were a lot more metals and chemicals and things and processed food and all this bullshit. And so like that has to explain why that just boom popped out of nowhere, like out of fucking nowhere.
That's definitely one of the reasons. But I'm reading this book called Immortality Incorporated, and they kind of went over this, but it basically, this is showing up now because people would typically die of heart disease before anything
they got Alzheimer's
would show up. So now people are living longer, and now this new disease comes out of the woodworks. And now you have a whole new branch of science called gerontology, studying old people.
Yeah, right.
But for sure, like the heavy metals and whatnot, it probably screwed up their brain somehow, I'm sure. So we keep going down the list. This is just a map of the United States. You can see there's more diabetes going across, as the years go by. So there's more diabetes.
Right.
but
a huge amount more.
Huge. But the death rate is about the same. So it's not very deadly, right? It must not be.
Well, the death rate, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, look at this. If you're looking at these maps, right? If you look at 2004.
This is just diagnosed diabetes.
Oh, this isn't the death.
This is diagnosed. Like, so number of diabetic people is getting
much
huge,
higher.
Much higher. But the death rate is about the same. And you brought up a good point is, some children are, they're kind of forced into it. So by their parents, so they can only live a certain lifestyle. Let's see here. So this graph talks about people, adults 18 years or older, age adjusted rate. So incidence of diagnosed diabetes. So the number of diagnosed diabetes in adults is about the same. Yeah. So in adults, it's about the same, but then you scroll down to adolescents.
Right.
Look at that.
And it launches.
It launches super, super fast. And especially in, who is this? This is black, this dotted line. And then this funky dotted line is American Indian. So we were just talking about the graphs. The rate of diabetics in this country is going up, but the death rate is pretty stable. So why is it important? So I'm going to make the case that diabetes or having too much insulin in your blood is the reason behind the rest of the diseases that are killing America in that CDC list. So let's go down that list. So heart disease, that's the number one killer. You need immune cells, fat, and insulin basically to make the plaque that heart disease is known for, like the atherosclerosis. So you need lots of fat in the blood, inflammation, which manifests in immune cells, and then insulin to tie it all together. Stroke and kidney disease. So all of that stuff is just going to lead to high blood pressure, which has a high correlation with stroke and kidney diseases. Hi, this is Future Brian here. I had to cut out some parts because I was getting really boring, like super boring. Anyway, this high blood pressure thing I'm talking about is all or mostly caused by low nitric oxide, a low amount of nitric oxide. Back to the past. Alzheimer's, dementia. So there's a vascular portion to dementia, and that's just an occlusion of arteries. So that comes from atherosclerosis building up over time and vasoconstriction. So you get the vascular part and the amyloid beta part. What do you... Yeah, beating your head. That's super good for dementia.
I had to get it out of me.
So the second part is the amyloid beta. It's a protein that builds up and it screws with the neurons firing in your brain. And so basically, if you're insulin resistant, we know that it's going to favor the buildup of that protein. And then cancer. So we know that insulin tells your body to grow, like it tells you to create protein and grow. And so what is a cancer cell? It's just a cell that's on a growing rampage.
Right.
So I think it's largely insulin causing a lot of these things. But what do you think?
I think inflammation is.
Inflammation?
I think inflammation is the root cause of almost all diseases or things, and ultimately stress. The difference between like distress and eustress, right? But ultimately, I think it's inflammation.
I would agree with you. If you have too much inflammation just from being obese, eating sugar, or anything, it's going to screw with all of your cell signaling. So it's kind of like static, right?
Right.
Your body doesn't work right because of all the inflammation. Let's get into how to not get diabetes. This is the most important thing. So now we know it's awful, and it can lead to a lot of horrible situations, the insulin and the inflammation and just the lifestyle that leads to it. So the basics: avoid sugar. This makes you fat. Sugar itself is inflammatory. Also, being fat, obese, is inflammatory. So you combine both of those, your signals aren't going to work in your body. And you don't drink out of a bird pond, as we learned from 600 BC. So I follow the plan of intermittent fasting. So if you're going to have sugar, you got to have a time where you're not going to have it. So.
Oh yeah, you just need to know how to use your sugar and not allow it to store.
Right. So you can exercise a bunch, right?
Right. Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
And that's
a whole nother topic, like having a certain relationship with your food and your body to know what you really do need and when you need how much of what.
Yeah. So like the worst thing would be you eat a bag of sugar and then you lay down.
Correct. Because then it just gets stored as
immediately.
fat.
Yes.
Yeah, just like, it's just worthless, dude.
So
yeah, exactly.
Avoid sugar. You got to exercise. And these people from 600 BC, those ancient philosopher people, he said, do it often, but not too hard. What do you think?
I would like to speak to that individual, because like saying not too hard, I don't know what they're necessarily referring to. I guess when I hear do it often, but not too hard, my brain first goes to how to keep people consistent. Yeah. Because if you're doing something too intensely, then it's hard to keep up with it. But it depends on if you're that type of person or not too. Because also by doing like HIIT exercises, high intensity interval training, it's more efficient of a workout. Your heart rate's going to be increased for a decent duration of time, which is then going to help you overcome some of those symptoms, those risk factors that we read about earlier that relate to diabetes, like high blood pressure, cholesterol, physically inactivity, being overweight. And so by working that higher intensity will actually help you faster.
Yeah.
But as long as you don't fall off the bandwagon.
So I think what he meant by that was don't overdo it. So if you did HIIT like for hours every day, that's probably not a good thing, right?
Oh no, you wouldn't be able, then you're not doing it correctly. Right. Your body couldn't sustain that.
Yeah.
And the only way you could would be by eating a lot and sleeping a lot. Because there's no such thing as overtraining if you supply your body with enough recovery. And recovery is sleep and rest. That's it. I mean, sleep and food. You
gotta get good sleep. You gotta have good food.
And hydrate. And then you're good to go again, That's why Olympic athletes can train 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because they're eating 12,000 calories and sleeping 10, 12 hours and,
Dude, there's this marathon that's in this town called the Mogollon Monster. And these people run for like 19 hours straight for 100 miles.
That's crazy. I've seen those.
And I asked one of the guys and he was like, I burn 700 calories an hour. So it's like, almost 15,000 calories.
Yeah.
And so he's eating the whole time. Just
For sure. And so I hope people think about that number, right? So many people are all about like, oh, calories in, calories out, right? So, okay, this dude's burning 15,000 calories running for 20 hours straight. 20 hours straight.
Yep.
15,000 calories is about 4 pounds. So you have to run for 20 hours straight to lose 4 pounds. In order to eat that 4 pounds, it's like freaking 20 cookies.
Yeah, for real. Like you could do that so fast.
It's so fast, but 20 hours. You literally have to run for 20 hours.
I know.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you can't outrun a bad diet, is what they say.
It's impossible. So eat vegetables.
Yes.
Like I always say that to people, literally eat all the vegetables, as many as you want, because it fills your stomach. It makes you less and you need those nutrients.
Yeah, you can get like a giant thing of broccoli like this for like $3, you know?
Yeah, exactly, dude. And if you're really struggling to eat it, put some nacho cheese on that or something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
I just eat it straight up.
Exactly. I'd rather someone eat a pound of broccoli with nacho cheese on it than never eat broccoli and go have chips and cheese anyways.
And they have no fiber, and then
Exactly, dude. And then they wonder why their shit looks like fucking mud pools. You know?
like the people on the carnivore diet, you know, they just eat meat all day and no vegetables.
It, dude. And
their shit just turns into
poof into just liquid.
Ugh.
Dude, Jesus Christ.
Okay, so to sum it up, how to not get diabetes, it's avoid sugar, exercise, and don't be obese.
Yeah, exactly. I agree to all that. And, you know, ultimately, which is what I want to talk about in our next episode, is the basics of living. You know, I wanted to talk about breathing next time.
Okay.
And starting from the basics will relate to all of these topics that we're going to be covering over the next however many months or years or however long we're going to do this for.
Yeah.
But, you know, people need to understand the basics before they understand some other intense things. And so I'm really excited how we're going to be able to relate everything to one another. And it's going to be cool. It's going to be really cool.
Awesome. So yeah, we just did it. The next topic is going to be about breathing, one of the basics.
Yep. And it's going to be related definitely to some of the things you heard today. Like you were talking about like nitric oxide and stuff. So there's a very strong relationship with breathing and nitric oxide production and proper breathing and how that's going to provide more energy for you. And it's going to help you sleep better. It's going to help you live a better life. And I mean, it makes sense to me. Breathing, we do more than anything else in this whole entire world, ever. There's nothing more that you will do in your whole life than breathe. So we better learn how to do it properly.
And now all of us are breathing manually.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
So you sold the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. But I hope you guys enjoy this. Once again, Christian Martirana here with Brian Devonshire, Immortality Lab.
Subscribe if you want to hear the next episode and learn how to live forever.
Yes, forever.
Leave a review.
Leave a review. Send us some feedback. What do you want to hear about? We have a whole list of things that we're going to talk about, but of course we're open to suggestions. And if there's anything else that you want to see in here, some kind of thing that might make it more entertaining, shit, dude, I'm open.
Let us know.
So yeah, let us know. We want to keep this entertaining as well as informative. So shit, like if you want me to start dancing with my dog during one of these, I can do that. Doesn't even matter. But yeah, all right. That was fun, man.
Cool.
Fun.
Cut.
Yeah, exactly.